all I had was a spreadsheet with all of the future guest names and phone numbers. I had to make over 100 phone calls begging these potential guests to book again with me on my listing.
Today, I'm super excited to be here with Stacey. She's the owner at Rare Find Rentals. She's also a co-author at Hospitable Hosts, as well as an Airbnb Superhost Ambassador and community leader. She has mentored nearly 2,000 new hosts as part of the Superhost Ambassador program. At which point do you come across the model of events? What do you think is an advantage of this model versus just the traditional guest model that makes the extra work involved?
I have one big answer, and it's revenue. Revenue. We've hosted so many events here that people see the reels. I do tours so that they can come and see the space. I don't think I've ever had anyone that I gave a tour to that didn't book. I can make more money just in an afternoon than having guests come for the night.
What, if anything, would you do differently if you were starting all over again?
I knew nothing about this business. I was very naive. The Airbnb follows the host, not the listing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we aim to bring together entrepreneurs, operators, founders, leaders, and thought leaders in the vacation rental and hospitality space, so they can tell us about their stories, the lessons that they have learned along the way, and maybe even some of the mistakes that they might have made along the way as well, so we can avoid making those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Stacey. She's the owner at Rare Find Rentals. She's also a co-author at Hospitable Hosts, as well as an Airbnb Superhost Ambassador and community leader. We're going to be talking about a very unique approach to make the most out of a vacation rental portfolio that has to do with actually getting into the event space. So using properties for the purposes of organizing and helping people organize their own events. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of that. We'll talk about the idea of, scaling down an operation based on, being self-aware enough about where we're at in our life, based on, where our career is at and whatnot. And we'll also talk about everything that Stacey has learned and taught other hosts as well, because she has mentored nearly 2,000 new hosts as part of the Superhost Ambassador program. And she has also learned a lot from, being a community leader at Airbnb. So thank you so much, Stacey, for taking the time and being here with us. Super excited to have you on. We like to start with a question having to do with if you were to start all over again in this industry, okay? So knowing what you know today, you had to start tomorrow from scratch. What, if anything, would you do differently, and or what advice would you give yourself, if you were starting all over again?
Sure, that is such a good question. And I got into this industry. Thank you so much for having me, by the way, first of all. And happy St. Patrick's Day. We're recording on St. Patrick's Day. I've got on my green, wishing I were in Ireland right now, having a Guinness. But yeah, thank you again for having me, Sebastian. That question is a great one, especially for me, because when I started, I knew nothing about this business. I wish two things I wish I would have done. I wish I would have educated myself more with podcasts. Believe it or not, that's how I got a lot of my information about the industry. I found a few podcasts, hospitality-driven podcasts about short-term rentals when I first started. But I wish I would have stumbled upon those before I opened my doors, because I learned a lot on the go as I was just getting started. So if anyone is listening that is just starting your journey, but haven't created your listing yet, haven't bought that first property, or haven't started that co-hosting business, if that's what you're going to do, I really do suggest educating yourself. There's so much out there now in our industry for short-term rental operators and owners that's really beneficial. So I would have done that. Second of all, when I bought my first property, it was already being operated as a short-term rental. She was on Airbnb and on Verbo, on both of those channels at the time. And I was really naive in that she told me that once I bought the home, she would be able to just transfer over very easily the upcoming bookings, which there were over 100 bookings in the future, it was a great book of business, but I didn't understand that it doesn't quite work that way. And so I was in a bind. Basically, she shut off her listing. All of the bookings were canceled, and all I had was a spreadsheet with all of the future guest names and phone numbers. So I had to make over 100 phone calls begging these guests, these potential guests at that point, to book again with me on my listing,
Mm.
and trying to explain that it's the exact same, that they would be walking into the exact same home with the same pictures that they had booked, because I bought it furnished, bought that property furnished. But that was a big, big learning curve for me. I was very naive in thinking that I could just snap my fingers and Airbnb would say, okay, she's the new host. It
Mm.
doesn't quite work that way, guys. The Airbnb, it follows the listing. I'm sorry, it follows the host, not the listing. So you can't just transfer from one host to another, potential bookings, future bookings. So that
Hmm.
was a big
That's
shot
a
in the
good
arm
point.
for me.
That's a good point, and it's especially important for people that are also listed, in multiple channels where, now you're getting into the conversations about, okay, is the OTA collecting payments, or, are you the merchant of record? And then, it just adds another layer of complexity
Correct.
too when
Another
you have
layer of
bookings.
complexity and
So
confusion.
definitely
Yeah.
something to keep in mind. And so in that case, you would say, could you have just taken over that account? Could you have just asked the owner, "Hey, can you switch over the details of the account and put the account under my name, and I'll take over your account?"
Right,
Essentially,
or she could have added me as a co-host and kept the account open until those guests, had completed their bookings.
mhm.
There were a few different ways that we could have gone about it, but I didn't know the questions to ask at that point, and so when she discontinued, she shut off her listing. I was just basically
Mm.
I was up the creek,
Wow.
for lack
Okay.
of a
Okay.
better word.
So take us back to that moment. So what were you doing, and what got you into the wanting to buy your first vacation rental property?
Sure. Like most hosts that I'm sure you talk to, because I talk to a lot, I've got host friends all over the world. Got into it by accident. Didn't really wake up one day and say, I want to be an STR operator and owner. There was a real estate investment opportunity. I've been investing in real estate basically since my 20s, doing a lot of home flips and such, but had never owned a property as a short-term rental. But like I said, this one property became available in our downtown area, was being operated as a short-term rental, and I saw future potential in it. Um, I didn't really know much other than the home was beautiful. It was decorated beautifully. I saw potential. They did have a lot of bookings already in the future that I, thought I would just take over. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I toured the property and thought I was about to be an empty nester at the time. I should say that too. Having raised four kids, I knew that I was going to start having some extra time on my hands, so I kind of wanted to pivot. I've been a coach at a local high school, so I had done that, and I'm a writer. I used to be I used to be an editor for a magazine, and so that was kind of my career up until that point. And then I decided to pivot and buy my first STR, and it took off, and now I'm hooked.
Okay.
That
Nice.
that was
And
6 years
back then,
ago.
yeah, 6 years ago. That's time flies. And then prior to that, you had been doing real estate mostly. You say flips. So
Yes.
what
And
were you involved
investing with
in
long
some
term.
long term as well?
Sure, long
Okay, single
term,
family long
yes,
term, multifamily long term, a
yeah,
little bit of
single
both.
family,
Single
yeah,
family.
single
Okay.
family,
Okay.
long term, and some flips. My husband and I have been doing that along the way
Okay.
over the years. We're still doing that, still doing
Okay.
flips.
I'm curious.
Yeah,
Talking about the flips side of things. What are your thoughts on the model that we hear about sometimes, where someone will buy a property that's not an STR, convert it into an STR, maybe rent it out for a year or two, and then sell it as a turnkey Airbnb. Is it a model you've done as far as part of a
It's
flip
not.
or?
That's a beautiful model, but it isn't something that I've gotten into at this point. We have some pretty strict regulations on short-term rentals where I live.
Mhm.
I'm just outside the New Orleans area market, kind of like a bedroom community of New Orleans, and the regulations are really strict. So, in fact, you can only own one short-term rental in the city that I live in, and then in the next city over, they have a certain number of permits, and right now it's maxed out, and no one can even apply for a license in that city. So
Really?
it's yeah. So that flip model, I'm not sure it would really work in my area, but our flips are generally single family homes that we find. We have a contractor that's amazing. He's a good friend and business partner, and so he does a lot of the renovation in the work,
Mm.
and then we flip it
Okay.
just as a for sale. Yeah,
Nice. Okay, we'll move into the hospitality piece and the events piece as well, and I'm curious to know if that
sure.
has something to do with the regulations in terms of why you decided to start doing events. But before, just because we're bringing together two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, I'm curious to know on the flip side of things, um, like what do you see, like, because there's people that say, okay, just buy and hold, there's no investment that you regret not to have holded,
Mm,
in a long enough time horizon, right? um
yeah,
but then of course there's the the upside of a let's call it quick flip, right, in terms of the turnaround. What do you look for when you're trying to decide whether you will hold on to a
sure.
property, or whether it's a property that has the potential to simply, well, simply, it's not simple, but
It's not simple,
rather
but yeah,
be flipped instead.
we're into the quick flip. That's our model. As soon as we finish the renovations, it's out on the market. So that's basically what we try to do. We don't hold on to them. We used to. We have done that in the past, but now we're into the quick flip
But what changed the mindset?
situation.
What changed the mindset between holding?
Well, we were holding them, and we would have tenants in them. Um, and really wanted to get away from that model just from the upkeep on the homes. Wanted to get away from all of the maintenance and what comes with
Mm.
keeping long-term rentals. Um, yeah. So now we did that with a bunch of other partners in the past, and now it's just us and this one contractor that we invest together. So it's much smaller group, if you will,
Hmm.
and he's a contractor. His wife is a real estate agent. I'm really she and I are I think really good with design, and so in a quick amount of time, we take the opportunity to upgrade the homes and then get them on the market.
Hmm. And just in terms of, because one thing is, um, remodeling and designing a property for SDR purposes.
Sure.
Another one is doing so for a place where you're gonna want to live yourself, and then of course another
Right.
one is
Totally
doing so for the purposes of trying to increase the value of the property. how
different,
how would how
and
do you
that's
see those
the
differ?
yeah.
How do you think differently about where to spend your renovation and design dollars, if it's
Yes.
an SDR versus, if it's a flip where you're trying to just add, potential resale value?
Sure. We invest most of our money in the kitchen and the bathrooms, of course. We're not so worried as a heads and beds type model, that you might be if you were flipping for the purposes of a short-term rental.
Hmm.
So we're thinking more in terms of single family home, and not really worried about maybe the amenities that you would think about for a
Hmm.
short-term rental, because it's just totally different just for a single family home flip.
Yeah. Because of course, yeah, the amenities tend to be the bedroom. Well, the bedroom count, the guest capacity, as well as the
Right.
amenities tend to be what adds more revenue potential, on the STR side. Whereas that doesn't necessarily translate to more after repaired value on the flips side of things. One of the things I find tricky with flips on the single family side of things is that it's not like you can calculate with certainty, okay, I'm going to put in this much, I know this is going to be the after repair value. There's a bit of intuition, there's a bit of, yes, there's some
Yes.
science, but there's a little bit of like you're hoping it will, you know allow you to go and resell for this much. How much of that is it something that you can really, precisely estimate by looking at comparables, by looking at, recent transactions, versus how much is it just kind of like gut feeling of you having seen hundreds of flips and you knowing that,
Mhm.
it can go for this much, you know what I mean?
Yes, it helps that we do have a real estate agent with us involved in the
Sure.
process. And where we live, like I said, we're a bedroom community of New Orleans, and we have a 24-mile bridge that separates our community from downtown New Orleans. And so proximity to that bridge has been really key. Sometimes, like you said, it is gut. I love that you said that because sometimes you just have a feeling that this is going to be a really good opportunity. But most of it for us at this stage is location, location, location. It's
Mm,
finding the homes that are in the good school districts that are really sought after. We also have a couple of subdivision communities in our area that are uh, they were developed back in the 50s and 60s, and those homes that were built then are now in beautiful communities, but the homes themselves are really needing updating. Some of them
mm.
even needing to be totally, raised
Okay.
and built from the ground up. So we do look for those opportunities in neighborhoods that are up and coming again, like they're kind of finding a
Mhm.
revitalization, and they're really sought after properties, even if it's just for the lot. So we're always looking in those
Okay.
certain areas for
Okay.
houses
Okay.
to flip. Yeah.
Okay, and before I move on from this flips subject, any mistake that comes to mind as to maybe a flip that didn't go as planned, or any rules of thumb that you now know that you didn't know when you first started doing flips, as
Yeah.
far as that goes?
I mean, we've had flips that where one in particular, I remember we basically broke even. I mean, we spent a lot of time and effort and money in the project. Thankfully, we didn't lose money, but it was basically a wash. And what I learned from that was that I'm not. I have to have you have to have the mindset you're not renovating this home for yourself to live in,
Mm,
and you may not need to put in such high grade, things that you would want in your future home. You're
mhm,
doing this for a flip. You have to be smart. You have to be a little more frugal than you would be if maybe you were splurging on some things for your own home. So that's a big lesson that I
mm.
learned for sure.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, tell me a little bit more about how you started growing the vacation rental side. Was
Sure.
it you just buying more of those properties, and also at which point do you come across the model of events? At which point do you start doing events?
Yeah, that's a great question. It evolved very naturally. My first short-term rental was in the downtown Covington area, which is we're a beautiful town just north of New Orleans, and the home itself had three listings under one roof, And it was a beautiful model because I had like a parent-child situation. I would rent out the 3 units separately, but on weekends mostly, I would have the home rented either by a family or actually what evolved at that home very organically was that brides and grooms found me. I remember when I first bought my first listing, the advice from the previous owner to me, she was emphatic. Whatever you do, don't host brides, don't do bridal parties. And I thought, okay, well, she said they were kind of a mess and they left things a little messy, a little bit larger footprint on the home, and I understood that. So I stayed away from those kind of bookings. But I one day I got a request from a good friend whose son was getting married, and she asked if her son and his groomsmen could stay at the home for the weekend, get ready there, take photos. It was a beautiful home with beautiful outside, spaces for photographs and whatnot. And so I relented and I said yes, and had the most wonderful experience with that group of young men. And word kind of got around that they had such a great time. And it just started very organically, word of mouth. I became known as the bridal party lady. People would start calling to rent, brides particularly, to rent for weekends where they and their bridesmaids could stay in the home, get dressed there. Hair and makeup team would come in. Um, and the photographer, videographer, that sort of situation for weekend stays. So I decided to run with that. Basically, I created a brochure for the home and took it to local vendors that are in the wedding space. I took it to reception halls. I took it to our local bridal shop, where brides normally, the places where a bride would normally go when she's just starting, her journey. She's going to book a wedding venue. She's going to book her church. She's going to book her wedding venue, and then she's going to start looking for that dress. So I concentrated in those areas and started just getting tons of phone calls. So most of my short-term rental business became direct bookings. I created a website. And really dug into that bridal party niche. I started going to bridal shows and marketing my home for brides and grooms. So I took it and ran with it. I did exactly what the previous owner said not to do, and it worked for me. As
Mm.
I also mentioned, I was a high school cheerleading coach for many, many years. And so as those young ladies started, they grew up and they're in their 20s and 30s, and we still were in contact, and they were like, call Miss Stacy because she has this beautiful place for brides. So I had an in there with a lot of potential guests. And social media has been wonderful, just posting all of the great brides and grooms. I did a lot on my own where I would go in and do some videography myself for reels, and it kind of snowballed. So when I bought my current property that I have right now, it's called Sleepy Lagoon, and we're on 30 acres in Covington, Louisiana. And the 30 acres we have two homes on the land. Well, three, but we live in one. But we have two homes that we operate, one as a short-term rental and the other as event space. So it works out that, we have a space for people to sleep, to stay the night, and also a beautiful venue for brides and grooms, mostly brides and their bridal parties to get ready. I'm sitting in it right now. And so that's kind of how we morphed into events. Again, it was very organic. I'm very lucky. What happens is when you're hosting bridal parties, the next logical thing is these brides remember the space. And when they get pregnant, they're looking for a space for what else? Their baby shower. So found ourselves in that niche. We just hosted yesterday a beautiful baby shower out here at Sleepy Lagoon. So we do a lot of bridal showers, baby showers, small events, retreats. Really just have gotten into the event rental space. It's my favorite thing to do. It's wonderful. They show up, at 10 in the morning. They're gone by 3 or 4. You don't have the beds to make. You just have the house to spiff up and the kitchen to clean. So that's kind of our sweet spot where we've landed.
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask, when you're first going about doing this, you were told by the previous owner, don't do it.
Right.
Yet you tried it, and you did it. Like, why bother, I guess, is a question, someone could be asking themselves, is why not just let the OTA bookings come in, and why bother?
Mm.
Like, what's the benefit of this model versus the traditional guest model? And you just mentioned some of the things that could have something to
Yes.
do with the preference, as far as like maybe it being less operationally heavy, as far as the rotation and the fact that they're not sleeping in there. But what else do you think is an advantage of this model versus just the traditional guest model, that makes the extra work involved in getting this event bookings worth it?
Sure, that's a great question, and I have one big answer, and it's revenue, 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 revenue. Once anything wedding comes into the picture, the price goes up, and they're
Mm,
willing to pay it. It's a once in a lifetime day. They're willing to invest in the space. Um, they by word of mouth, and since I've been doing this for many years, the proof is in the pudding. We've hosted so many events here that people see the reels. They see I do tours, so that they can come and see the space. And actually, I don't think I've ever had anyone that I gave a tour to that didn't book. Once I get them in my doors and they see how gorgeous this is, I'm looking out overlooking a beautiful lagoon with ponds beside it, lighted fountains that are all through the lagoon. It's just a gorgeous. It's a wall of windows looking out over that, all this natural light coming in. So it lends itself very easily to an event space. And I've just found that it's, yeah, revenue. I can make more money just in an afternoon than just putting it up on Airbnb and having guests come for the night.
if you had to like estimate, of course it doesn't have to be precise, but like one event represents how many nights that you would have been able to, like, how many nights that represents, more or
One
less.
event is about equal to a weekend stay.
Really?
So instead, I could have, sure. So I could, potentially have a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday event and make 3 times what I would if I had just a guest stay for that weekend.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And then of course. So a couple of things there. The second property you bought, which is where you live now, from what I'm understanding. So that's kind of like a
it is.
house hacking situation. Was that the
Yeah,
intention when you first bought it? Like, I'm gonna
it,
look for a
it
place where I can live,
was.
that it pays for itself, type of
Yes,
thing.
we weren't really looking. What happened was, this used to be my parents' property.
Oh,
My father, yes, and they owned it. They bought it back in the mid '90s and renovated it themselves back then. Both of my parents are now deceased. When my mom passed away in 2019,
sorry to
we
hear that.
we were, oh, thank you. Yeah, she's greatly missed, and purchasing this property was something, number one, that our kids were just, they were adamant about, because they grew up out here with their
Mm,
grandparents and they didn't want us to lose it. So we left our suburban life and moved out to the quote country. I'm only 3 minutes from 3 miles, excuse me, from our downtown area. But when you're out here, being on the 30 acres, it's a gated property. Like I said, with lagoons and ponds all throughout, you feel like you're in another world. So we bit the bullet. We bought the property after my mom passed away, and that was right, as you remember, right before COVID. So during the year of 2020, I took the time to, I wasn't hibernating, I was working, man. I was renovating and getting these spaces ready because I had been a short term rental owner and operator for a little while at that point and saw the potential for what we had out here at Sleepy Lagoon to recreate the model in one of the homes as a short term rental, and then in the other home I saw it mainly as an opportunity for bridal parties to get ready because that's what had become my bread and butter at my first short term rental. So it
Hmm.
was just yeah, like everything for me has been in this business, it's been very organic. The the hardest part, I would say the most work that I do is in the marketing of it and just being kind of specific and smart about how I market the space and how I present it on social media for future guests. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's kind of how
and
I got
and
here.
yeah, that makes sense. And when it comes to this model of events, it's clear that there's more money to be made, right? You've just mentioned how one event can be the equivalent of one event that's just an afternoon where they're not even staying overnight can be the equivalent of a weekend worth of a guest staying. That makes sense. Of course, I think there's two things. One is, okay, how do you make sure that there's a consistent, reliable source of events coming in, which is what you did, thinking outside of the box and going,
Mhm.
towards where are the places where people are going to when they're getting their event, and you letting them know that you're available, and
Sure.
that makes a lot of sense. So one is okay, there's more money to be made, but it's in theory so much more work that how do you automate that so that it can continue to kind of just come on a recurring basis, which sounds like that was mainly referral partners, and if there's other things that worked for that,
Exactly what it is. Vendors.
please. Yeah, okay, makes sense. Now what
Yes,
about
it's vendors.
no, go ahead. Vendors, so
Um,
vendors as far as people that, yeah, are already
Photographer.
advertising to that same clientele.
Correct, correct. It's I have a bunch of wedding photographers that I collaborate with. That's also again, like I was saying earlier, what a bride looks for first, what they book first,
Sure.
and that's going to be their photographer, their wedding venue, their dress.
Hmm.
So I concentrate in those areas. I also have very good referral partners in some local catering companies.
Okay.
And so if someone calls a caterer and they want to host, say, an engagement party, and the caterer will tell them, well, where are you holding the engagement party? Oh, haven't gotten that far yet. So they'll refer me and vice versa. I refer caterers when I have events
Hmm.
planned here and they don't have their food figured out yet. So it's really been it's been some specific vendors that I've kind of focused on, and that keeps it coming in. And going back to like you said, all it was for the bridal showers was crafting that brochure that I had that was specific to brides, and instead making it specific to new mothers and putting it in local baby shops, and they're shopping there, and all of a sudden they see this brochure and they see this beautiful space, and maybe someone had been talking about throwing them a baby shower, and so they spread the word, and that's how I get
Hmm.
calls.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, what about the other piece to it, which is not, how do you balance traditional guest stays with events? Like, what's the strategy? Do you know there's a time of the year where most of the events will take place, but then does it also conflict with your high season? And so in that case, how do you kind of like protect one or the other? Like, which do you give
Right?
preference to at first, and
Preference
is there
to.
a point at which you open up the other one? Like, what's the strategy
Yeah,
having a property
great
that mixes both?
question. Great question, because we actually we decided at the beginning of this year to discontinue overnight stays in the main house, the event center,
Okay.
because the events keep on rolling in. There's really no high or low season for bridal or baby showers, for engagement parties, for we even do. We've had people book the property for engagements, to come out and propose and have photographers shoot their proposal out here. We've even done, the property so beautiful. Different times of year, people will book the property itself for outside photos, for Christmas cards. So we've utilized the space, very specifically for events and for even outside events is, I guess what I'm getting at. So we don't host any more overnight stays in this one house. So that's our model. We have a cottage that was renovated back in 2020, specifically as a short-term rental, and so we still use that as the short-term rental and then use the other house as the event space.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. What about? I think I've heard that there are also like OTA equivalents, but for events. Have you seen
Yeah, one
success
of
with
the
those?
largest. Yes, I have. One of the largest is Peer Space,
Pure space.
which is probably the most popular one for events. I get a lot of referral or bookings from events from Peer Space. Sorry. Um, Other than that, I mean, I would say Peer Space is the place to go because there's not many of them out there. So
Hmm.
you have a pretty captive audience if you advertise on Peer Space.
Hmm.
So.
And then what about pricing? Because it's not like pricing your short-term rental for guests
Yeah.
where you can have comparables and it's like seasonality and you can have a dynamic pricing tool. In this case, it's
Right.
like how do you price it, like,
Ha
and then
Yeah,
how do you make the most out of that pricing? Is it just kind of like gut as well and increasing it
it took some
as you get
time.
more events, or what's been the approach there?
Correct. It took some time. I started out in this main house at Sleepy Lagoon. I started out actually doing some trades just so I could get people here. And I have a marketing company that came and did a retreat day here, and I gave it to him just for the cleaning fee, so that I could have some content to be able to get out there. And so it started out that way, and then you have to do your homework just like you would with a regular STR. You have to call around and see what's the going rate out there, and make sure that you're pricing yourself properly, and also for the season, because obviously my rates aren't static. It's much different if someone's going to book in January, other than if they book in April, when the grounds are just beautiful, everything's blooming, it's our high season. Brides want to get married in the spring where we're from, spring or fall, because it's such beautiful weather. So it took a while. It did take a while to figure out the pricing, but I guess I hit my sweet spot because people are willing to pay it, and I'm also happy with the price.
Hmm.
So we're
Hmm.
good.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more trial and error in terms of
Trial
the
and error,
pricing,
very much so.
um, and
Yep.
then it's interesting because there does seem to be an element of seasonality there, for the events as well. Now, tell us a little bit about your involvement with Airbnb in terms of their ambassador program. How does that come about, as well as you co-authoring Hospitable Hosts. Yeah, just give us a little bit of context as to how those opportunities to also give back
Sure.
and educate the industry came about, and what you've learned from those.
Sure. I'll start with Hospitable Hosts because it's a project that I'm so proud of and really excited to be a part of. I was on a Facebook page years ago and stumbled upon a post by a woman named Jody Odlin, and she was looking for writers to collaborate in a book. She was looking for hosts to
Hmm.
collaborate in a book that she was putting together, looking for co-authors. As I mentioned, I'm a writer in my past life, writer and editor. And so I was a freelance writer too for many magazines, local regional magazines. So I had experience there. I had experience being a host for a few years, and I figured, why not? Why not apply and see if I might be a good fit for this book? Had an interview with Jody and was selected to be one of the first 40 authors to be in Hospitable Hosts, the first edition, which back then we didn't know it was going to be the first book. There are
Yeah.
now three Hospitable Host books. We're number one best-selling on Amazon. It amazingly took off in the industry. It's one of these books. If you're a host, if you're a current host, please read it. If you are thinking of becoming a host, you will get so much information out of it, kind of what I mentioned before about podcasts and listening to educate yourself. By Hospitable Hosts on Amazon. Any of the three chapters or all, you're going to gain so much information from hosts from all over the world. Our tips, our tricks, our hiccups, our sad, awful stories, our wonderful guests, our success stories. So it's a project that I'm really happy to be proud of. So thank you for asking me about that wonderful
Yeah,
book.
yeah. Interesting. And
When it
any
comes,
highlights in terms of learnings from that experience, as far, because I'm sure you got involved in
sure.
talking with many other hosts, and also probably read through
Yeah.
the book once it was finalized. So anything that comes to mind in
Yes,
terms of like the main takeaways that you think people would get from actually reading that book?
yes. The big thing that I would say that happened for me and that I would emphasize for any host is to embrace this community. I
Mhm.
was thrown into, as I said, the first 40 authors from all over the world. When we had our book launch, we launched in Nashville to coincide with an international convention, short-term rental convention that year. And we had never met each other, but we came from all over and became this little clan of, the first 40 writers in the book. And it's exploded with book two and book three. And now when we get together, it's just really exciting that we have such an amazing community. If you do go, I'm assuming you've gone to a lot of short-term rental conferences and summits. It's just amazing the community that's out there. It's unlike any other because it seems like every host wants to, well, because we're hospitable, we want to help each other. We want to see each other succeed, and that rising tide does really raise all ships. And so I've just found it to be such a welcoming community, and that's what the book exposed me to. And I would encourage anyone who's in this field to start going to not only educate yourself in the business, but and to run your hospitality business as a true business, but to get into that community of hosts because it's unlike any other.
No, it's true. It's true. We're lucky to be in an industry where people are so nice. I mean, it's every time I go to a conference, which we do go to a lot of them, it's like, wow, like I can't believe this is work. It's almost what goes
Right.
through my mind every time I'm at one of those events. Can't believe this is work. It doesn't feel like work, but anyway, very interesting. Listen, Stacy, I could keep you here for 2 more hours. And go on, and I'm sure we would have more to cover. I think, very interesting model that you have found a way to streamline and convert into a repeating source of business, that is both lucrative as well as fun. From the sound of it, you enjoy it as well. So that's, I
Love
think,
it.
it does give us a lot of things to think about in terms of, you know this industry does seem to be going towards more unique properties, more unique experiences. That also seems to be the value proposition that the OTAs are really pushing forward in terms of like how this industry compares to the traditional accommodation of a hotel, right? The space aspect of, like, being able to not share common areas, and having the opportunity to be together with all your family. So I think more and more, as the industry goes towards that direction, there will be a big opportunity, which you've already shown that can be embraced, to give this edge on the revenue side by complementing the revenue of unique properties with event
Yes.
types, accommodations, right? So I think that's a very interesting angle. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your insights. I want to thank you for having opened up and telling us about your story and your lessons. Where can people connect? Where can people connect if they want to reach out, if they want to learn more, if they want to follow along?
Sure. Sure. My Instagram is Sleepy Lagoon LA, and that's also my website. So you can view my properties and get in touch with me, Sleepy Lagoon LA. I am a Superhost ambassador, which means that I coach new hosts, brand new hosts who have never posted a listing on Airbnb. And it's free. It is absolutely free to the new host. It's a wonderful program that Airbnb has. If there are any listeners today that are thinking about starting your first listing, you could reach out to me through my website, Sleepy Lagoon LA, or you can simply go to airbnb.com /r /host with Stacey. And my name is Stacey. And that will take you to my unique link, get you hooked up with me. I help you set up your listing, help you optimize it to get your first guest. And like I said, it's totally free. So I've coached over 2,000 new hosts over the past 2.5 years, I guess, that I've been doing that. And it's a joy for me. Coaching is my heart. It is really what I get up every day and look forward to. That is my morning commitment is every morning, and excitement is to get on and see what new hosts I've connected with for that day. So get in touch with me if you're planning
That's
on
awesome. And we'll
planning
make
on
sure
doing your first.
to put those links on the
Sure.
comment section as well, so people
Thank
can
you.
refer to them. And thank you again, Stacey, for taking the time. It was amazing to have you on, and we'll see each other very soon.
All right. Thanks, Sebastian. Have a good one.